The destructive force that has cursed the Mishima family bloodline, the Devil Gene is one of the most powerful forces within the Tekken universe, which as of Tekken 8 has been nearly completely wiped out, with, spoilers, Reina being allegedly the last person to carry it. The Devil Gene grants the user superhuman abilities such as laser beams, enhanced strength, and the ability to stop their hairline from receding. Yes, this is canon. In order for someone to access the powers of the Devil Gene, they need to use the emotion of desire to transform and use its power, which was a major plot point in Tekken 8. As far as we know, Azazel is the originator of the Devil Gene, and long ago he granted its power to exceptional humans in order for them to be his servants. These humans were most likely ancestors of the Hachijo clan, but this plot point is kind of vague as of the making of this video. Eventually, Azazel was sealed inside a temple due to its destructive power, and it was prophesied that he would awaken again in times of war and chaos. That brings us to the most relevant member of the Hachijo clan, with that being Kazumi Mishima, who carried the Devil Gene, married Heihachi, and as far as we know, had one child with him, with that being Kazuya. But again, this might be clarified later with further information on Reina. Her mission was to assassinate Heihachi, as the Hachijo clan deemed him to be a threat to humanity, but of course she failed because at this point, Heihachi is an invincible character. During her failed assassination attempt, Kazumi revealed her devil form, which ended up starting a domino effect for Heihachi, which involved him doing research into the ins and outs of the Devil Gene, which actually resulted in the birth of Lars Alexanderson, as Heihachi wanted to see if he genetically possessed the Devil Gene. Circling back, after killing Kazumi, Heihachi decided to test his son to see if he possessed the Devil Gene, which also led to the infamous domino effect of dropping Mishimas off cliffs. Heihachi dropped a 5-year-old Kazuya off a cliff and presumed that if he survived, that he more than likely possessed the Devil Gene, which is exactly what happened. Kazuya, on the brink of death, survived the fall and activated the Devil Gene, which enabled him to climb back up the cliff and swear revenge on Heihachi for killing his mother and attempting to kill him. Fast forward a couple of years to the first King of the Iron Fist tournament, Kazuya defeats Heihachi and returns the favour to Heihachi for what he did long ago. During the events of Tekken 2, Kazuya ends up slowly being corrupted by the Devil Gene, and due to winning the first King of the Iron Fist tournament, he becomes the new head of the Mishima Zaibatsu. He ends up meeting a young woman by the name of Jun Kazama, who originally has the goal of stopping the Mishima Zaibatsu's illegal animal trading, but eventually she falls for Kazuya and ends up pregnant with his child. Also, during this period, Jun senses the evil within him, but she always holds out hope for the good in him, which does exist as the entity known as Angel. Not much is known about Angel, but just take it as Kazuya's good nature, with Devil representing his bad nature through Azazel's given power. At the end of the second King of the Iron Fist tournament, Heihachi ends up fighting Kazuya in the finale, and due to being overwhelmed, he transforms into his devil form as a last resort. Unfortunately for Kazuya, Heihachi is damn near invincible, so he ends up beating him and one-upping Kazuya by throwing him into a volcano where he is presumed dead. This then leads to the next carrier of the Devil Gene from Tekken 3 onwards, which is Jin Kazama, who is Kazuya's son. Apparently the, in quotation marks, soul of Devil split into Jin from Kazuya's original Devil, but again it's unknown how exactly the Devil Gene functions in relation to Azazel, as these separate devils may or may not be independent of Azazel's own will. Also, with what we've seen in the recent Tekkens, it's heavily implied that each devil is just a piece of Azazel, and the Devil Gene is hereditary, so the explanation of devil splitting was most likely a holdover from when the exact details weren't established, but it still makes sense in hindsight. Anyways, by the end of Tekken 3, Heihachi shoots Jin in the head, which awakens his devil form, and Jin escapes from Heihachi and the Tekken Force. During Tekken 4, Kazuya comes back as he was resurrected by the G Corporation, and now we have 2 Devil Gene users running around. Kazuya believes that if he was able to control the Devil Gene, he'd be able to destroy Heihachi and the Mishima Zaibatsu, which will allow him to take power, whereas Jin simply hated everything to do with the Mishima part of his family, including the Devil Gene. This leads to a confrontation between Kazuya, Heihachi and Jin after the tournament has concluded, with Jin chained up and Kazuya being possessed by Devil. Devil attempts to extract their other half, but is unsuccessful due to the special properties of the Kazuma bloodline, which also relates back to Angel. The reason why I brought up Devil's soul splitting earlier was due to Reina's inclusion into the story, as it does bring up the question as to why Devil didn't try and reunite with her Devil Gene, but again that can be explained further through Tekken 8's DLC, and there are other explanations such as the Devil Gene not being 100% hereditary, so Kazuya's Devil literally split its soul to survive, or Jin Kazama's blood being perceived as a threat, or even Jin's lack of desire / evil nature, which is the trigger for the Devil Gene. Honestly, it's not really worth figuring about, but I left that in there for you guys that may have had those questions. After this, Kazuya ends up taking back control of his body and merging the Devil power into his own being, which gave him full control of Devil. The events of Tekken 5 happen right after this, with Jin and Kazuya both escaping the compound. Kazuya goes off to do Kazuya things, while Jin ends up being plagued by multiple nightmares and struggles with the increased influence of the Devil Gene, which was slowly starting to overcome him. During the 5th King of the Iron Fist tournament, Jin is defeated by his rival Hwoarang, but his devil form takes over and brutally attacks Hwoarang. After, he goes on to defeat Jinpachi Mishima, the new leader of the Mishima Zaibatsu since Heihachi is presumed dead, and he ends up taking control of the Zaibatsu in a way that seemingly mimics his father and grandfather. Now, in Tekken 6, it gets interesting as this is the first game that Azazel is introduced. So Azazel had a prophecy that once the two Dark Stars clashed in battle, he would awaken and destroy the world due to humanity's sins. Azazel was trying to communicate with Jin, which led to Jin believing that he was the origin of the Devil Gene, so if he destroyed Azazel, then his family and the world would be free from the Devil Gene. To carry out this plan, Jin starts World War III. Yes, completely rational thinking there. And in response, Kazuya, who is now the leader of G-Corp, builds up G-Corp's army to fight the Zaibatsu and places a bounty on Jin's head. Skipping ahead a bit, the ongoing warfare awakens Azazel in his temple, and Lars Alexanderson, who is one of Heihachi's sons and Kazuya's half-brother, and Raven enter the temple and fight Azazel, seemingly destroying it. Lars goes on to fight Jin outside the temple, and during the fight, Azazel bursts out of the temple, seemingly at full power. Jin goes on to explain that Azazel can only be destroyed by someone with the Devil Gene, and then he lunges at Azazel again, seemingly destroying him. However, in a later scene, we see that Jin, unconscious in the desert, still has his devil markings, which means that he started World War III for nothing and left a power vacuum for someone to take over the Zaibatsu, which leads to Tekken 7. Now, I've already gone through a lot of the information given to us in Tekken 7 previously, as this was chronologically the first game where Kazumi Mishima is fully fleshed out, so I'll skip over that and go over the important details. Heihachi takes control of the Zaibatsu, proceeds to continue the war with G-Corp and Kazuya, and announces the King of the Iron Fist Tournament 7, all in the effort to expose his devil form to the world so they would turn on G-Corp. He allies himself with Claudio, who is a member of a group of exorcists whose sole purpose is to banish supernatural evil from the world, which includes those carrying the Devil Gene. Fast forward, he gets attacked by Akuma from Street Fighter. Yes, he's relevant to this video. As Kazumi asked him to kill Kazuya and Heihachi if she could not do it before she died. After this fight, Heihachi is presumed dead again, so he uses this to his advantage by cancelling the tournament and luring Kazuya out to an open space, where he would need to expose his devil form while fighting Akuma, as Akuma is just that strong. Shenanigans with space lasers happen, which leads to Kazuya and Heihachi fighting in a volcano, and Kazuya wins with, and say it with me, Heihachi being presumed dead. Meanwhile, Jin's been having his comatose arc, and by the end swears to defeat Kazuya and destroy the Devil Gene. Also, Zafina sealed Azazel's power into her arm, or at least some of it. In Tekken 8, we find out more about the Devil Gene, such as Desire being the trigger, and we finally get to the new Devil Gene user in Reina. Now here's where I would go into who Reina is, but again we don't have any concrete information about her. All we know is that she is definitely Heihachi's daughter, as she has Mishima Electrics. Moving on, Jin loses the ability to tap into the Devil Gene, and Kazuya fully embraces the Devil Gene, which leads to him starting the King of the Iron Fist Tournament 8, and subsequently resurrecting and absorbing Azazel into his own body by taking Azazel's power from Zafina, which increases his power and transforms him into true Devil Kazuya. The power of Friendship Squad jump Kazuya but fail, with Claudia seemingly being the only casualty, though through sacrificing himself with his ultimate demon killing move, but the end credit suggests he actually survived. Jin travels back to Yakushima, where he goes on a spiritual journey and actually talks to and fights his Devil Gene self, and he essentially does what Kazuya did by merging himself with his Devil self. However, Jin's Devil self, or his Devil Gene, seemingly wants to actually protect people and will also willingly follow his will, which is again probably due to his Kazama blood. Meanwhile, Kazuya goes for a 30 kill streak, with Reina also embracing the destruction, and with the help of the Friendship Squad, this leads to Kazuya and Jin having their final clash, with both of them having their devil powers. Jin achieves his angel form after having a vision of Jun, who reminds him of the Kazama bloodline special power to cleanse evil, which leads to him using that to completely wipe out the Devil Gene within himself and Kazuya. Jin presumably ends up the victor, as Tekken 8 has two endings, and we find out after this that the reason why Reina was seeing shadows in her room was so she could intentionally activate the Devil Gene. Okay, so the original script that I wrote for this video came out before the DLC, so right now I'm going to go through it. I'm going to briefly just summarize what happens, the events, as well as just go through the parts that relate to the Devil Gene and what was clarified further through this DLC. So I'm just going to quickly summarize what happens in the story, because not much of it is actually about the Devil Gene, but it's mostly about the Mishima clan. So Lydia, Eddie, and Yoshimitsu are essentially running back-end work for the main story crew. But due to Reina gives them information on the Tekken monks, and the Tekken monks are essentially a group of martial artists who may or may not, I don't think it's really clarified, but they may or may not be a part of the Mishima clan, but at the very minimum, they know the Mishima fighting style. And essentially the Mishima fighting style is further clarified to be a technique, a fighting technique that first started off with swords, but then became more of an open hand fighting style, which related to slaying demons, essentially. So they go to this temple, they find the Tekken monks, and what happens is that they find out Heihachi is still alive, but he's lost his memories. So Heihachi has to go through this whole trial with Lydia because she's perceived as the perfect fighter. And this ends up with him fulfilling a prophecy where a meteor that only comes within, I think it was every 200 years, crashes down, and in order for them to essentially get the ultimate Mishima fighting karate fighting style technique, they have to essentially stop this meteor from hitting. So Heihachi fulfills this prophecy. He gets the ultimate Mishima fighting technique, which is essentially just him going god mode, essentially. He destroys the Tekken monks, destroys the back-end team, and then it sets up for Tekken 9, I'm assuming, or next DLC. So to summarize the most important parts, the Mishima fighting style is essentially a fighting style created to fight demons, and that would obviously go hand in hand with the Devil Gene, essentially because they're considered demons or not extraterrestrial, but supernatural threats. And this meteor, which may or may not have any sort of significance, because the meteor that crashes into the Mishima temple the Mishima fighting style temple, is caused by Jin and Kazuya. And this is due to their clash at the end, where they both lose the Devil Gene. So that may or may not be important, but it's not really clarified further than that. So now we're going to get into the more interesting parts in the classified archives. So in the classified archives, we have Jun's journal, who kind of goes through the events of Tekken 2, but provides a little bit more context. So she explains the events from journal's entries 1 to 3, but in the 4th entry, she goes on to reintroduce Devil as a spirit, as she says that the evil presence that was possessing Kazuya was also trying to come for Jin. So it does kind of, at least it goes back to what I was saying before, whereas it might be, the Devil Gene might be hereditary, or Devil might genuinely be a spirit. But what I'm kind of getting from this, at the very least, the Devil Gene and the Devil Spirit may potentially be different from one another. And the reason why I can say this is because of, again, characters like Jinpachi being possessed by a devil, and the fact that it explains here that Kazuya's blood, as well, at least this is what Jun presumes, that her blood as well as Kazuya's blood reacted, which is what formed Angel, which was what she was able to then use to thwart Devil from going inside Jin. But even with that, Jin still has the Devil Gene. So to summarize, the Devil Gene and the Devil that possessed Kazuya may be two completely different things, which we could also see through characters like Jinpachi, who was possessed by a demon, unknown demon. And the reason why I'm saying this, and the reason why I'm saying a lot of this stuff is up in the air, is because Tekken does change its story quite a bit. So it's a little bit fuzzy, but again, maybe I've interpreted it wrong, you know. So if you guys want to correct me in the comments, feel free to do so. But as far as I'm aware, they may potentially be different things, may potentially not be related to Azazel at all. Okay, so this next part is quite interesting because it goes over the Hachijo clan. So essentially, it further iterates that they were a clan that split off from Azazel, and that's the reason why they have their own will. And it also explains as to why Azazel never tried to join with a character like Reina, but I'll explain that in a sec. So essentially, after Heihachi killed Kazumi, he went and killed the entire Hachijo clan except for one. And what this person was a baby girl. So this potentially may be Reina. So Reina might not be Heihachi's blood daughter. It might be his adopted daughter, who is technically a Hachijo, not a Mishima. Obviously, she'll take the Mishima name, but she's technically directly from the Hachijo clan. Which does now make sense within the canon, as we understand why she has never been mentioned up until now. And it also would imply that her Devil Gene potentially may have different properties from Kazuya and Jin's, you know, especially seeing as Kazumi's Devil Gene was a lot more different to their Devil Genes. So this is a bit of an interesting lore tidbit which is kind of hidden, especially because this isn't really clarified. But obviously this one's more so for you guys that missed it. Again, if you guys feel like I'm explaining this wrong or if there's anything wrong here, feel free to let me know. Finally, in Emma's journal, she further clarifies the trigger of desire for the Devil Gene. And she even goes on to say that she found written accounts carved in stone, which read, "The avaricious of humankind were transformed by their greed into wicked demons who reigned over their fellow man." Which could again also imply multitudes of things. It might again mean nothing, but it could imply that the Devil Gene is technically within everybody, but Azazel has the power to spike that. It may mean that Azazel was once a human whose desires eventually transformed them into a demon. You know, there's a lot of things you could take from that, but again, if you don't want to look too deeply into it, it could just be, again, them reiterating that desire is the main trigger for the Devil Gene. Now I want to quickly summarize the appearances and the powers of the Devil Gene and its primary abilities. Since the start of Tekken, the Devil form has been available to Kazuya, with Tekken 1 making it a cosplay of Star Platinum, and Tekken 2 onwards making Devil Kazuya a character with their own separate move list, up until about Tekken 5. From about Tekken 5 onwards, Devil becomes a part of Kazuya's move list, with only differences present when Devil Kazuya is a boss character. Devil is treated as the final boss in Tekken 2, and as a secret/unlockable character throughout the Tekken series, when they were considered as a different character from Kazuya, and again as an addition to Kazuya's move list later on. Devil Jin is a regular form of Jin's from Tekken 3 onwards, and is first playable in Tekken 5. He differs from Devil Kazuya as he has black feathered wings and his skin goes pale instead of purple, which could all be effects of the Kazama bloodline. Moreover, he differs from his normal counterpart as he uses the Mishima fighting style, which his normal counterpart has renounced and refuses to use, such as traditional electric wind god fists. Azazel appears in Tekken 6 and Tekken 8, with mentions in Tekken 7. He appears in both games as a boss character that utilizes crystallized attacks and lasers. Devil Kazumi, as of making this video, only appears in Tekken 7, and she only appears as a boss character. She's a roughened version of her normal counterpart with features such as her hair being turned white, and her moveset has the classic devil beams mixed in with her own stuff, such as her summoning her white tiger. Lastly, we have Reina in Tekken 8, we only get to see a brief glimpse of her devil form, which looks more similar to Kazuya's. Finally, for abilities, the Devil Gene grants its users super strength, flight, laser beams, I'm assuming enhanced durability, supernatural abilities, and hairlines.